I felt them long before I saw them. Eyes. Watching. Waiting in the inky blackness that swirled around me like a shroud. For 3 grueling years, I labored through the night shift at an abandoned subway maintenance tunnel. I had convinced myself that I knew every last shadow, every errant sound. The tunnel had become a strange, familiar landscape to me, a place where I would often find solitude in the whispers of the dark. I even grew accustomed to the inexplicable. I had accepted the creaks, the soft, unsettling whispers as merely the shifting air sighing around me. It was all too easy to dismiss those ethereal hints, to persuade myself that nothing lurked in the murk beyond the flickering fluorescent lights that hung overhead. But on my last night, something would shatter that comforting illusion, wrenching me from my delusions and forcing me to confront a chilling truth. I was never truly alone, and I never would be again. The tunnel itself was an intricate labyrinth of damp, crumbling stone walls and rusted tracks, a desolate place swallowed whole by an eerie silence that folded in on itself like the folds of a reluctant blanket. It stood as a graveyard for long-dead trains whose echoes reverberated with the ghosts of a lost era, an era that had moved on while this forlorn outpost remained suspended in time. My responsibilities were limited to the occasional cleanup, cursory maintenance checks that often felt like mere inconveniences, more routine than necessity. As I carried my flashlight like a lifeline, the beam of light sliced through the oppressive gloom like a desperate scream echoing into the void of night. My shift began as it always did, wrapped in a quiet routine that served to remind me I had faced these same shadows plenty of times before. But that particular night was different. It seemed to hum with a thick air of anticipation, a palpable tension crackling like static electricity just waiting to unleash itself. I pushed open the creaking, splintered door at 10 p.m., inhaling the stale smell of mold and decay that permeated every surface, déjà vu washing over me as I crossed the threshold into the abyss of the tunnel. As I walked deeper, the old fluorescent lights buzzed ominously overhead, their weak glow casting a dim light that barely illuminated the path ahead. Each footfall echoed back to me, amplified by the vast, hollow expanse. The hours drifted through murky time, each moment stretching into the next, until I'd made my customary rounds, checking for leaks, squinting into darkened corners that felt far too treacherous. I rubbed my arms against an unwelcome chill that never seemed to dissipate. You'd think after 3 long years, I would have grown numb to the discomfort, but it had a peculiar way of biting back, gnawing at my resolve until it stung. It was around 2 a.m. when the whispers began. I'd heard them before, interlaced with the soft whistle of the wind as it swept through shattered panes, perhaps carried on the flutter of a rat's scurrying feet. Yet now, they resonated with an intensity that felt almost like voices swirling in an incomprehensible language, each undecipherable syllable making my hair stand on end. I shook it off, pinching the bridge of my nose, convincing myself it was just fatigue playing cruel tricks on my mind. But the gnawing feeling of being watched intensified. A shiver crept down my spine as I took a second, tentative glance over my shoulder. Nothing. Just the endless stretch of darkness behind me and a flurry of shadows dancing at the corners of my vision. It was a familiar stage fright, but on this unsettling night, it was accompanied by an unshakable sense of urgency, as if the shadows themselves were beckoning me to flee, to abandon my post in fear of what lingered just beyond. Pushing those feelings aside, I pressed on, illuminating every metallic surface with my beam, probing the hidden underbelly of the hollow corridors. That's when I stumbled upon it, a narrow alcove, half hidden in obscurity, as if the tunnel itself had birthed a secret long forgotten. It was a place I didn't remember seeing before, yet that night, it felt alive with an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force that invited me closer, luring me closer to the edge of reason. Peering into the darkness, my flashlight flickered just enough to outline what was etched into the cold stone wall. Graffiti, but not the vibrant kind that bursts forth with color. Instead, It was a chaotic tapestry of frantic scrolls, desperate and erratic shapes that seemed to form no coherent sense. Hollow-eyed faces, reaching hands that clawed silently for something beyond their dark prison. A chill skidded down my spine, but a voice echoed in my head, arguing desperately, urging me to push deeper. "You're imagining it," I whispered to myself, voice trembling. Yet the air felt heavier here, thick with an oppressive force that weighed down my chest. I turned away, my heart thrumming against my ribcage like a captive bird desperate to escape. The sensation of eyes boring into me was inescapable now. I could almost feel their gaze pressing against my skin. Still, the hollow whispers continued, wrapping around me like a shroud, invasive and intimate. Something shifted in the dark beyond my beam. I swiveled suddenly, forcing my light onto what appeared to be an ever-swirling mass of formless blackness. But all I found was the echo of my breath, shallow and scared. Damn it! I cursed under my breath, chiding myself for losing my grip on reality. The wind rustled through the tunnel as I retreated back to my designated work area, desperate to drown out the whispers, the gut-wrenching feeling of being observed by unseen eyes. I worked faster than before, my actions a thin line dividing my rational mind from the encroaching irrational fear that clawed at my consciousness. But every shadow grew darker, more foreboding, and an invisible grip wrapped tighter around my lungs. I shut my eyes for a moment, reaching deep into the recesses of my mind, desperately willing away the unease that crawled its way up my spine. Time slipped away from me like sand through my fingers, and something dark and primal deep within screamed for escape. Yet I remained rooted in place, my mind strangely warped, as if some unseen force was locking me in this horrid limbo. Little did I know the true horror awaited me, a darkness that was all-consuming and ancient, lurking just around the corner. As the clock struck 3 a.m., a fracture echoed throughout the tunnel, sharp, cutting, and unforgiving. My heart raced, the air around me thickening with a palpable dread. I edged toward the sound, a sick curiosity driving me closer like a moth to a flame. The whispers rose discordantly around me, an overwhelming cacophony of conflicting emotions, a swirling tempest of fear, urgency, and inexplicable dread. I found myself drawn to the alcove again, as if pulled by forces I could neither see nor understand. Kneeling before the wall, my body damp with perspiration, I reached out, brushing my fingertips against the rough, uneven surface. At that moment, the very air around me shifted, suffocating in its insistent weight. My breath hitched inexplicably as I felt it, an unmistakable sensation brushing past my shoulder, something intangible and terrible stirring the very air around me like an omen foretold. I didn't dare turn around. Instead, I remained fixated on the alcove, straining to comprehend the jagged shapes and whispers that suddenly felt alive, watching me intently, like hungry predators stalking their prey. The darkness thickened, an electric buzz dancing across my skin, every warning bell ringing violently in my head. Then, there it was. A shadow shifted, a figure emerging just at the edge of my light, as if stepping from the very fabric of nightmares. For the briefest instant, I caught a glimpse of it. A silhouette, vague and fleeting, yet unmistakably human. Or was it? The shape twisted and contorted, breaking into fragmented angles that defied the very logic of the world around me. And then, just as quickly, it vanished, slipping back into the enveloping darkness, leaving me gasping, trembling. The lights flickered violently, and in that disorienting moment, I stumbled backward, crashing to the ground in a panic. The whispers crescendoed around me, a clamoring choir of unseen mouths wanting something I could not comprehend. Driven by sheer instinct, I scrambled to my feet and sprinted back toward the entrance, guided only by the faint flicker of my dying flashlight. Panic propelled me forward, yet the tunnel felt longer, more foreboding, as if the very walls had come alive, swaying, closing in around me with an oppressive hostility. I could almost hear them, the unblinking eyes that had been staring in silence from the dark all along. The world beyond that exit felt like an eternity away, too distant to hold on to for dear sanity. As I neared the exit, an impulse gripped me. I paused, glancing back for one last, fleeting moment. The endless hallway remained still and empty, shadows shimmering and shifting but never revealing themselves. The very essence of the unknown lingered ominously. I threw myself into the night's embrace, slipping out of the tunnel as if escaping the grip of a ghost from a forgotten grave. Since that harrowing night, I have recounted this story to myself countless times in the subsequent dark hours when sleep evades me. Every flickering shadow, every quickened pulse now speaks to me in a chilling language that I fear I might eventually decipher. I feel their presence lingering. Their gaze burrows into my very soul, unyielding, awaiting the moment I might falter. If you've ever felt the weight of invisible eyes fixed upon you in the darkest corners, know this: you're not truly alone. Subscribe to The Dark Witness for more chilling confessions from those who have glimpsed what lurks just beyond the light. In the stillness of my apartment, I often find myself standing vigil, peering into the dark corners, ears straining to catch the hush that now feels so charged with possibility. The shadows feel alive, and sometimes, I think I'm beginning to grasp what they desire. Do you hear them too?